Coming up on episode 147 of Anarcho Agenda, I talk with Dennis Leavitt from United We Pledge, found at unitedwepledge.org, and we talk about his ideas of patriotism and what he's doing to educate young people how to be better citizens. This podcast is covered by the BIPCOT No Government License. This allows use and reuse by anyone except governments and or government agents. Learn more at bipcot.org. It's nice when I have a chance to sit down and interview someone I consider to be a friend. Someone I look up to, someone I've known for a long time. This is episode 147. I'm Riley Blake, and I'm sitting down with someone who is heading up a nonprofit organization to teach young people how to be better people in the world. This is an interview with Dennis Leavitt. Here's the interview. I've got with me Dennis Leavitt from United We Pledge. Dennis, what is United We Pledge?
Wow, first, Riley, let me just say how honored I am to be on your show. You've always been a hero of mine. It's nice to be with you today. United We Pledge is a organization that was created several years ago, call it 3-ish years ago, created with a desire to think about patriotism, to think about how our youth in the nation feel about it, and seeing if we couldn't make a difference in the world by helping youth become better citizens. United We Pledge was birthed out of this, sometimes the controversies that exist in the United States, and wondering if there isn't a way to protect self-governance to help us become, again, better individuals, better humans, better citizens. So it was started off with an ideal of let's do what we can to do events that promote patriotism so that people feel like they've got a sense of awe and wonder at our great nation in events. But then we also recognized that we had to do something to help kids specifically. I believe in education. I've spent a career as an educator. I believe that if we can find a way to ignite knowledge in the minds of students, that we really make a difference. So it didn't take long before we said, oh gosh, events are a nice thing to support, but we really have to have an educational platform that supports youth in their endeavor to learn about history and civics. And then we spent time working about what's the right platform, how do we do it, what do we do? And we think we've landed on a remarkably tremendous outreach program for schools. And so United We Pledge is all about helping students, taking the burden off of teachers, believing that if history is understood and loved, then we can create a better trajectory for our future.
That sounds like a really good explanation. I definitely think that education is important when you're talking about history and talking about how to establish people's minds and get them established in thinking for themselves and deciding what is true and what is not. My other question would be, what does patriotism look like to you? Because in my mind, I would describe myself more of an anarchist. I don't really believe in patriotism. I guess I'm a little more radical of a libertarian than you might be, and we might understand liberty differently. But what in your mind is patriotism, and why does that promote liberty?
Great question. And we probably see life through a little bit of different lenses. Thank heavens we live in a nation that allows for that. Patriotism, to me, is not extreme nationalism for sure. It is about having a love and an appreciation for foundations or ideals or a history that's given me opportunity to chart my own course in life. Patriotism for me is again a love for and an appreciation for this nation to which we belong and the freedoms that it gives me to act, worship, believe, speak, all of those rights that we enjoy. I don't have to act in a certain way to be patriotic. In my mind, it doesn't mean I go, put red, white, and blue on my clothes or fly a flag or eat watermelons on the 4th of July. It means that in my mind and in my heart, I'm one, grateful, two, that I'm at least understanding or educated enough to get it, and three, that I feel a responsibility to be the best version of myself I can and to help other people in this cause, even if their ideals or viewpoints differ than mine. That's how I view patriotism. It's a need to be thankful.
I really liked that answer. I also liked how you mentioned that you were not an extreme nationalist. I think that's an important thing to be because I don't think the United States of America is going to be always around forever. I think nations come and go. We've seen it with the Roman Empire. We've seen it with other empires. I don't think the United States is going to be here forever. But regardless of that, I do agree that it's important to have some awe and some, I guess, understanding of what the founders of America went through so that if the American empire does go, which I think it inevitably will, that we can establish another society or maybe a better society and take the principles that our founders taught and bring them into that society. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought much about the destiny of the United States of America, and you sound uber convinced that its destiny is that it will be replaced or will fall at some point. I guess I haven't given enough thought to know about that, so I can't speak to that without a little more processing. But I do agree that lessons learned from the past are always going to be valuable. I'll tell you where a quote that really has stood out in my mind for a long time. I was in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., years and years ago, taking our children through. If you've been to the Holocaust Museum, you know that at that point, anyway, we got a little booklet, had the name of someone who was in the Holocaust, a historical figure, and we went through this museum learning from their perspective, right? Thinking about them because I had their passport, in quote marks, their passport, so to speak. And then at the end, the way the museum was designed is you got to learn about whether they lived or died. So I was really moved by that part of history where there was so much inhumane treatment of other humans. And I was thinking about this particular human who I didn't know and didn't have a lot of context with. I'm maybe belaboring this point too much, but when I got to the end of the Holocaust Museum, there was a place where you watched a little film and, it was wrapped up. But I also got to a place where I saw a quote by Baal Shem Tov that said, "Remembrance brings redemption while forgetfulness leads to exile." It really impacted me dramatically. It caused me to recognize that, boy, if I didn't at least know about that element of history, if I'd never seen it, then I could maybe be doomed to repeat it one day. And wouldn't it be terrible if I ever thought that the right thing to do would be to annihilate or to harm other humans? So that part of history, even though that empire fell, we should have learned from that, from Hitler's empire, what not to do. You can learn from the history, both the good and the bad, what needs to be avoided as well as what needs to be embraced. So again, long-winded answer, Riley, sorry. But yes, our history, regardless of the destiny of the United States, is something that can benefit us moving forward in the future, I believe, always.
I would agree with you. And I think you brought up the Holocaust, and I think a lot of people forget, or, we live in a world where people say it never happened, but, whether it happened or not, I believe it did, and I'm pretty sure it did. It doesn't give us the right to dehumanize another human being for religious reasons, for any reason whatsoever, to the point that we're killing them in gas chambers or killing them en masse.
Yeah, for sure. And and the lessons of history help us make decisions on what's the right alternative and what's the wrong alternative.
Right. How did you get involved with United We Pledge? And then we can talk about Liberty Village.
Yeah, thanks. There is a distinction. I'm the president of two nonprofits. One is United We Pledge, and out of United We Pledge grew a second nonprofit called Liberty Village we can talk about later. How I got involved with United We Pledge is I spent a career as an educator. I've had a unique smattering of business opportunities in my life that have allowed me to be in different industries, leading business in different capacities. But at the time United We Pledge was started, I happened to be the vice president of public relations at a company called Balance of Nature, which I know you're familiar with.
I am.
And in that role, we were talking about this patriotic idea and how do we help inspire youth and citizens. And it was actually Balance of Nature's initiative from a public relations standpoint to say, let's do some good things in the community to support events. And as the vice president of public relations, then it became my responsibility to sign the contracts and look at the events and see what we could do to support and how would we host these kind of events and what our branding and messaging ought to be. But it didn't take long before we started to feel like making a difference in the lives of youth would be more than just a side hustle, so to speak, or just a marketing campaign or a public relations outreach, but that it ought to be really genuine, sincere, intentional, well strategized. And so I found myself one day actually with a business card that said United We Pledge on one side, and if you flipped it over, it said Vice President of Public Relations at Balance and HR on the other. And it became so much of a intense workload that I had to make the decision. I spoke with the CEO and talked about I just need to do one or the other. And we determined the best course of action to make the biggest impact was if I took over United We Pledge wholly, completely, and gave my full effort and focus there. And like anything, once you jump in with both feet, you find that doors open, opportunities arise. You can do a lot better job than just kind of juggling another ball in the air, so to speak. So as soon as we jumped in with full force and energy towards United We Pledge, it started to expand and develop and grow, and the vision grew. And so kind of fell into it in some ways, but was really happy to embrace it once I fell into it.
Now let's talk about Liberty Village. What is Liberty Village?
Liberty Village, we're going to give the credit to all things Liberty Village to a gentleman named Tom Walker. Mr. Tom Walker, in 1986, in a little town in Montevallo, Alabama, got an idea and sketched on a napkin that if historic buildings from America's history were all built in one place so that youth didn't have to travel to Boston, Philadelphia, D.C., Richmond, et cetera, but could go to one place kind of Disneyland-esque and focus on American history and learn about American history, it would be really good for his community and for the state of Alabama to have youth have that kind of experience. So he started in 86 with a vision to build American buildings and fill them with historical interpreters, reenactors, and create educational programs that kids could enjoy. We stumbled across American Village shortly after starting United We Pledge and found the light bulbs and the inspiration and the kind of the spirit just filled quickly in our hearts. When I say we, Lex Howard, again, the CEO of Balance of Nature, and myself, and their family, we just kind of stumbled across that place. And we were working fully committed to this United We Pledge effort. But we found this magical place called the American Village in Montevallo, Alabama. And then the conversations ensued where it was like, why don't we build something like that in Washington County, Utah? There's nothing like it, west of the Mississippi. And if you want to talk about kids having a hard time to get to historical sites,
Yeah.
if you live in Alabama, then try living in Utah, where the plane tickets are more expensive and the challenges are exaggerated.
Right.
So that was the impetus. So we're building a 32-acre, call it campus, but educational center with replicas of 22 iconic buildings from America's history built to scale, where students and families and tourists can come, step back into the 18th century, not because the buildings are important, but because what happened in the buildings are important and because they provide kind of a backdrop, like a theatrical kind of experience where you can get your heart and head in the game and then have a chance to talk to reenactors and folks who lived back then and talk to guides to make modern application and use technology to have some fun, engaging, interactive experiences with it. So yeah, we're building a mini Disneyland for American history.
That sounds really interesting to me. I think it'd be really fun to go check out Liberty Village and see what it's like at some point. That way I can get a feel for American history and see what it's like. When will Liberty Village in Utah be completed? Do you know?
Simply put, whenever Disneyland's done, we'll be done. Or in other words, never really. We build one building at a time, one experience at a time. Right now, we're to the point where we opened phase 1 in September on Constitution Day in September 2025. Phase 1 was done. We've started phase 2. We're building buildings right now for phase 2. We've got one building finished. We have 3 other buildings under construction in one phase or another. So it's a matter of one building at a time. But I don't know if you and I agree on this one, but I think we do. One of the tragedies of our nation is that we're in significant debt. We cannot, in good confidence or faith, say to youth, hey, come to Liberty Village. We're each ideals and principles and values from America's history, but we're a place that is leveraged so far in debt. Now, you don't do debt. Our nation shouldn't do debt, but it's okay if Liberty Village does debt. We just don't feel like that's appropriate, right? It's something that it would be so hypocritical. So Liberty Village is being built we're a nonprofit. It's all built on donations from folks, and the more donations we have, the faster we build. So phase 1, fully funded, fully paid for, no debt associated with it. Phase 2, the 3 buildings I'm talking about under construction now, fully funded. So when will it be done? I don't know. You write me a check for $100 million today, it'll be done a lot sooner than if you don't write me a check for $100 million
Well,
today.
I don't have $100 million, so that's amazing. I'm glad you guys are making progress on it. I don't remember where Liberty Village was when I left Balance of Nature in 2023, but I'm glad you guys are making a lot of progress.
In 2023, it was a dirt field. Balance of Nature donated those 32 acres to us. What we've done in the interim is we've had to build roads and infrastructure. We've had to build parking lots, restrooms, all of that. Phase 1 was a $32 million project. And Riley, we feel fortunate. We feel grateful to those who've contributed. But we've had over 9,000 contributors to Liberty Village who to date have donated $40 million almost. And phase 1 had to have $32 million, $33 million almost in order to get that done. Everything that's underground that you don't see in construction is very time consuming and very expensive. So yeah, we spent a lot of time looking at dirt, and there's a lot of time when the dirt was having pipes and engineering and more dirt and all of those kind of things done. But we started going vertical with construction, and have a beautiful phase 1 done, and now we just take it a building at a time.
That's wonderful. I'm glad that there are people interested in continuing this vision and helping you at United We Pledge fulfill that dream of teaching American history.
Yeah, it's been a really great blessing. And when I say 9,000 donors, that's everything from, the widow's mite, somebody dropping a few dollars in a bucket here or there, to some monthly donors, some who give us, $5 a month, some who give us $17.76 a month for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Uh, and then others who've been uber generous. There's some companies that have funded an entire building. So yeah, it totally just depends. And everyone who's contributed, it feels like their heart is in a place where they're saying, we want to do something to help youth. And we've tried to be really good stewards of those finances. We're careful in our expenditures. We follow all the regulations and rules that are expected of a 501c3. But we also see all of those donations as sacred, to the point that we have to do with those funds what we say we'll do. So we have a board of directors who, ensures that there's good oversight, that we're not being casual or careless with funds that are important.
That's good to hear. I think a lot of people could learn from that and learn that, if people are donating to your organization, that you should treat those funds as something that's not exactly yours to do with as you please, to fly around in private jets or whatever, that you're actually putting money into that organization.
Yeah, that's exactly right. As a leader of a nonprofit or two nonprofits, it's the obligation I feel most strongly about. It is that those funds are to accomplish the mission, the stated mission and the purpose of the nonprofit. And again, it feels like that's what, if I was an elected official, feels like that's what I had to do. I'm there to represent the people, and I had to represent them the way that they vote or anticipate or expect me to act.
What would your ideal society look like? Have you thought about this?
My ideal society, I'm a religious guy, Riley. You probably know that about me.
I do.
Um, and the religious tenets that I adhere to speak often about what's called Zion. I'm not a smart enough guy to know a lot. I'm a guy that every day it feels like I've got my hands full just trying to read my scriptures and say my prayers and be a good be a good person.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I'm a real heavy, smart, intellectual thinker type. So for me, Zion is as simple as believing that we can be part of a community that cares for one another, that supports one another in our good times and our bad times, that we try and ensure that if there's any poor who live amongst us, that we do what we can to lift and help them in their need, and that we all become the best version of ourselves. Do I have time to tell you a little story?
Go for it.
I live in a little neighborhood. We're not a neighborhood filled with massive homes and, just whatever. We're pretty normal middle class America is kind of how I would see and describe the place where we live. We came up with a little idea not long ago, and I pitched it to some of my neighbors. It was that Easter ought to be a time that we think about things besides Easter bunnies and Easter eggs a little bit more, and maybe make it more worshipful. So I went to a few neighbors and I said, hey, what if we did a neighborhood drive-through, or a walk-through where we invited people to come and we put displays in our yards, and we, put some scriptures up in our yards, and we invite people to come through and think about Jesus during Easter, novel, right? I live in a neighborhood with 105 houses, and not all of them even share faith necessarily. But I said, hey, what if we tried to do something good for our community and kind of build this experience? Would you be willing to put something in your yard? Would you be willing to put lights up? Would you be willing to let thousands of cars drive by potentially? So I live in this little neighborhood where virtually everyone said yes. In our neighborhood, there were 15,000 people that walked through our neighborhood at Easter. At nights, the streets were filled with people shaking hands and neighbors coming out and sitting on their porches and talking to guests. There was no weird retaliation. There was not anger. There was not, kind of contention or whatever. It was just this place filled with people trying to do good, each helping each other out the best way they could. A neighborhood who rallied, even though we had differences, and tried to come together in a good way to help the community and to inspire and to do something really thought-provoking and interesting. And it really felt magical to me. If the world could do that in every neighborhood, I think it'd be grand. And I can't affect every neighborhood, but I can affect mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A guy named Dieter Uchtdorf said that we ought to lift where we stand, and that's the way I see it.
Dennis and I could have covered much more ground, but we had some technicalities at the end of the show where his audio was lost. But I feel like I've got plenty of audio, and Dennis gave me plenty of things to think about as I'm focusing on my work here in New Hampshire of being a libertarian, of being more liberty-minded, and being able to know what my principles are and be able to know who I am when I'm standing on principle rather than just ideology. This concludes episode 147 of Anarcho Agenda. I'm Riley Blake. Please check out my advertiser at thinkpenguin.com and also visit unitedwepledge.org. All those links will be in the show notes of this show. If you like the show, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/crblake86. That's patreon.com/crblake86. Thank you very much for listening. Catch you next episode. Peace.